Welcome back, everyone. From the moment winter began creeping across Eastern Europe, Moscow believed it was finally time. For months, Russian military planners had waited for the season that once saved the Soviet Union from annihilation. Snow, ice, darkness, and brutal cold, these were supposed to be Russia's natural allies. The Kremlin believed that winter would slow Ukraine's counteroffensives, cripple Western logistics, and restore Russia's lost momentum on the battlefield. What followed instead was one of the most devastating miscalculations of the war, a winter offensive that began with tactical promise and ended as a frozen disaster. The plan looked solid on paper. Russian commanders assumed that frozen ground would allow heavy armor to move freely again after months of muddy stagnation. They believed Ukrainian troops would struggle with power shortages, fuel constraints, and supply fatigue. Russian state media hyped the idea that Europe itself would break under energy pressure and reduce its support for Kiev. Inside the Kremlin, confidence quietly returned. Winter was not seen as a challenge, it was seen as a weapon. But wars are not won on paper. They are won by logistics, morale, adaptability, and truth. And winter, as Russia was about to relearn, is an unforgiving judge. At first, the offensive appeared to work. Russian forces intensified assaults across multiple fronts, from eastern Donbas to southern sectors. Artillery barrages increased. Drone activity spiked. Infantry waves surged forward under the cover of snowstorms and limited visibility. Ukrainian defenses were tested relentlessly. Some Russian units managed to gain a few kilometers, capturing shattered villages that had already changed hands multiple times. Moscow seized these small advances and declared them proof that momentum had returned, but beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Russian logistics, stretched thin for months, did not improve with the cold. They collapsed further. Fuel gelled in tanks, trucks broke down on icy roads, supply convoys became easy targets for Ukrainian drones using thermal imaging that could see through darkness and snowfall. Ammunition shortages resurfaced. Soldiers waited days for basic supplies that never arrived. Winter did not protect Russian logistics, it exposed them. The cold also punished manpower. Russian troops, many of them recently mobilized with minimal training, lacked proper winter gear. Reports emerged of frostbite, hypothermia, and untreated injuries. Soldiers slept in frozen trenches, sometimes without adequate heating or shelter. The myth of Russia's winter superiority clashed with the reality of corruption and poor preparation. Funds allocated for winter equipment had vanished somewhere between Moscow and the front lines. Ukraine, meanwhile, had prepared differently. With Western assistance, Ukrainian forces had stockpiled winter clothing, thermal optics, generators, and fuel reserves. NATO-trained units rotated efficiently, maintaining combat readiness. Ukrainian drones operated relentlessly, hunting Russian movements even at night. Artillery crews adapted firing schedules to temperature changes. Engineers reinforced positions against freezing conditions. While Ukraine did not enjoy winter, it endured it better. This difference in preparation slowly turned Russia's tactical advantage into a strategic nightmare. Russian assaults became predictable. Infantry attacks often followed rigid patterns, advancing across open terrain into well-mapped kill zones. Ukrainian defenders waited patiently, letting Russian units exhaust themselves before unleashing precision fire. Entire Russian platoons vanished in the snow, not because of heroic charges, but because of outdated tactics colliding with modern warfare. Morale began to crumble. Intercepted communications revealed frustration, fear, and despair. Soldiers complained about being abandoned by commanders. Some units refused orders to advance. Others retreated without authorization. Desertions increased, though Moscow suppressed these reports aggressively. The winter offensive, that was supposed to inspire confidence, instead deepened disillusionment among the ranks. At the command level, panic slowly replaced confidence. Russian generals faced impossible choices: push forward and lose men, or halt operations and admit failure. Neither option was acceptable politically, so assaults continued, grinding forward with diminishing returns. Each captured village cost dozens of lives, only to be abandoned days later under Ukrainian counterfire. The battlefield itself turned against Russia. Frozen ground cracked under artillery impacts, creating treacherous terrain. Snow-covered minefields became deadly traps for advancing forces. Rivers partially froze, tempting crossings that collapsed under weight. Vehicles slipped, overturned, or stalled in exposed positions. Ukrainian forces exploited every mistake with ruthless efficiency. The skies also told a different story than Moscow expected. Western, supplied air defense systems remained active throughout winter, denying Russia air superiority. Ukrainian pilots adapted to cold weather operations. Russian aircraft flew fewer sorties due to maintenance issues and fear of losses. The hoped for aerial dominance never materialized. Instead, Russian pilots faced an increasingly hostile airspace. Back home, the narrative began to strain. Russian state television continued broadcasting triumphalist rhetoric, but the tone subtly shifted. Victories were framed as tactical repositioning. Losses were ignored. Maps displayed exaggerated advances. Yet families noticed the growing number of funerals, regional morgues filled, recruitment offices struggled to meet quotas. The gap between propaganda and reality widened dangerously. Internationally, the winter offensive backfired. Rather than weakening Western resolve, Russia's actions strengthened it. New aid packages were approved. Ammunition production increased. Ukraine's allies saw that Russia was not unstoppable, it was bleeding. Each failed assault reinforced the belief that Ukraine could hold and eventually push back. By mid-winter, the offensive had lost momentum. Russian units dug in, exhausted and depleted. Equipment losses mounted. Commanders quietly acknowledged that decisive breakthroughs were impossible. The offensive that was supposed to change the course of the war had instead frozen into stalemate, at enormous cost. But the damage went deeper than lost territory or equipment. Strategically, Russia had spent irreplaceable resources for minimal gain. Elite units were degraded, ammunition reserves shrank further, repair facilities struggled to keep up. Most critically, time was lost, time that Ukraine used to prepare future operations. The psychological impact was devastating. Russian soldiers no longer believed winter would save them. The old legends of Soviet endurance meant little against precision, guided artillery, and drone warfare. The belief that Russia could simply outlast Ukraine through brute force weakened. Doubt crept into military planning, political decision-making, and public perception. Ukraine emerged from the winter battered but unbroken. Its forces gained confidence, experience, and credibility. Commanders refined tactics, intelligence improved, coordination with allies deepened. Ukraine did not win the winter, but it survived it far better than Russia. And in war, survival is often the first step toward victory. As spring approached, the truth became unavoidable. Russia's winter offensive had failed to achieve its objectives. It did not collapse Ukrainian defenses. It did not break Western support. It did not deliver a decisive shift in momentum. Instead, it drained manpower, exposed systemic weaknesses, and hardened Ukraine's resistance. What was meant to be Russia's season of dominance became a season of reckoning. The frozen ground now held the evidence: burned vehicles, abandoned positions, silent trenches, and countless unmarked graves. Winter did not choose sides, it punished those who underestimated it, and in this war Russia paid the higher price. The lesson was clear, brutal, and irreversible. Nostalgia for past victories cannot substitute for modern strategy. Winter is no longer a weapon, it is a test, and Russia failed it. As the snow began to melt, one reality remained frozen in place: the war was far from over, but the illusion of Russia's winter invincibility had shattered forever.